Rusty Upper, welcome.
How you doing?
Doing great, and it's so nice that we finally met, and it's nice to see
Yeah.
you in kind of like in person in a virtual way.
Yeah, well, this is what we've got to deal with these days, isn't it? You just got to, this is as good as it gets for now. But no, thanks for having me. It's really nice. It's really cool.
So I'm gonna start with the first question. When was the first time that you get in touch with music? I mean, let's talk about your beginnings.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, the probably the biggest memory for me was when I was in school. I must have been about 5 or 6 or something like that. And the teacher was really cool. His name was Mr. Cross. Rod Cross, his name was. He was really cool. When I first met him, I thought he was going to be so miserable, but he was proper cool. Still around now, as far as I know. Anyway, so he's like, oh, today we're going to teach you a little bit about the 60s. And he brought in this vinyl, and it was Happy Jack by The Who.
Wow.
And it was just like a little 45, and he put it on. And when the drums came in, I was like, man, that's cool. That's what I want to do, and then, really, if I had perhaps had a different family, and I'd gone home to my mum and said, hey mum, there's this band called The Who, do you know who they are? And if she'd been like, no, maybe if I had a younger mum or something, then that would have been the end of it possibly. But she was like, yeah, I know The Who. And then she had all these vinyls, and it was like Led Zeppelin and the
Wow.
Beatles. And for me, it was like just an incredible introduction and education. So that's where the seed kind of started, and then I got more interested in the idea of being a singer. But I was always not shy, but I was always like, oh no, I'll just stick with the drums. But here we are. Things change and your confidence grows, and yeah, so that's really how it started, really. And I didn't get into a band till much later, so it was
Awesome.
more of like a fantasy for a long time.
Great. That's cool. That's very good. And how long you been playing drums?
It sort of started spiritually at that moment, if that makes sense. But then, of course, like all kids, and they have these crazy stories of how they, learn to play. I had cardboard boxes for a while, and stupid things like that. But I guess I was going to like sort of lessons and going into like places in schools and things, and trying to get some time on the drums as much as I could, because at the time I don't think that it was so much a case of, oh, we can't afford a drum set. It was more, do we buy our kid a drum kit? He could like deafen us and then not be interested after a year or something. So, but it was from around 6. So whatever that equates to now, probably about 25 years, 25, 26 years
Awesome.
properly, when I had a proper kit, and I wasn't just like sneaking into music shops going, can I have go on your kit? Do you know what I mean? So
Cool. Cool. Yeah, and I want to know, about your first blues band and your first indie band. What can you tell us about that?
Um, the first blues band, I met a guy in college, a guy called Stefan Richfield, and he turned out to be like, he was like a huge blues fan, and he loved rock music, and he really actually got me into so much stuff. And then we immediately started jamming, in our own dreadful primitive way, and then that became Gecko. So then we have worked together ever since. To the point where at the minute we're working on stuff. He's going to be on the new album and that. And then I was in a band called The Retake, which was a local indie band.
Mhm.
And we started to get some serious headway. We had it's funny because we had some amazing songs. I think the execution, sometimes the way we were, it was what kind of, gave us the downfall. But when you look at the songs were brilliant. I didn't write them, but that was the first time that I looked at someone who wasn't famous, someone that I knew, and
Mhm.
went, wow, the songwriting. So they really influenced me, from a point where, you get like an iPhone recording of some dodgy acoustic demo. And then by the end of it, you've got a song that, to be honest, we could have played it on the radio. It was really nice stuff. But I think it was a product of its time. Indie was so in, Britpop was really in, and it was just the right place at the right time. And really, I think if we had persevered for a lot longer, we would have gone a lot further. But you know, some people have a fear of success, and I think sometimes we had a few big offers come in, and I think some of the other band members were maybe a bit intimidated by it, and they sort of shied away, and I think that's what led to the downfall. But it was great times, you know. It's all learning, and you know, it's all different material and strengthening different muscles, you know, and so that really got me started into songwriting, really. So I always have something to thank from everything I've done. I always pull something, you know.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, and when this happened, which year was this? 2000 or 1990?
No. It was. I met Stefan in 2003, and then we put the band together properly and played our first show, which was officially my first ever proper gig, was in 2008. And then the indie band was the same time.
Okay.
And it all kind of fizzled out around 2011. It all kind of came and went at the same time. It was just, you know, that era, that time was just full of bands, and it was a real discovery.
Mm-hmm. And when did you open for Paul McCartney's song? You know,
that was with the Retake, and that was at a venue in my hometown called the Joiners, which is quite a famous venue. It's only a small venue, and it's not like the Cavern or the 100 Club, but it's got its own amazing history, and like you can read a book about it and things like that, and stuff like before the what was it called, the Isle of Wight festival, Jimi Hendrix and the Who jammed in there under the stage and things like that, so it's got a lot of energy to it. But that was a really great gig. That was 2010.
Right.
And he was just a really nice, really cool guy, really down to earth. It was a bit like looking at a clone. But you know, he was really cool. And one of my favorite Paul McCartney albums is Flaming Pie, and he played quite a lot on that. So we talked a bit about that, and yeah, it was like a dream come true. It was like, I can't believe this is happening. You know, it's any little crumb of Beatle DNA you can get. If you're a Beatles fan, you'll take anything. Do you know what I mean? Like George Harrison's half cousin, yeah, that'll be fine, you know. But
awesome.
We just enjoyed it. It was great. It was really good. He was an interesting guy, but he was very nice, and he played a great set.
Great, cool, very good. And when did you went to, you know, your solo career? Your two first solo albums. When that happened?
That was about 2011, because I mean, I think it's never anything, well, usually it's never anything personal towards bands or anything. You know, sometimes people drift apart, and every person, when they do projects and they start to kind of get an understanding of what they want, ultimately there's always a time when they think, maybe if I broke away and did a little bit on my own for a while, it could be, you know, really great. So it was about 2011, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go. And it was still kind of like Stefan was on it, and I had friends helping me. So it was like I hadn't let go of the comfort blanket. It wasn't like I was completely on my own. And I don't like to be, you know, I love a collaboration. Everything is about getting people involved. I would never look at anything I've done and said, yeah, that was all me. You know, there's always outside factors and people putting their bits in that often make it so much better. So, but yeah, I kind of just did it as like just a bit of fun, and it sort of blew up, and then I did another one, and it was cool. So that's what really kicked that off. And I just kind of felt like, oh wow, I mean, I can write my own stuff, and I can just kind of do what I want, and then just have people in when I need them. And it made being in a band again a lot more enjoyable, because I had both sides and I'd had time on my own. So when I did go back into a room where it was a real, you know, it had to be a real equal kind of input, I was fine with that, because, you know, I'm a team player, but I do love to be solitary as well.
Awesome. What can you tell us about your new material, your new album?
It's going to be, it's going to be a lot more straightforward rock. You know, I think it's going to be a bit more for the standard rock fan. I think you go through a cycle where you go, I'm going to play it safe, I'm going to try something crazy, I'm going to play it safe. You know, you kind of have to go back to your roots. Because I mean, the last one I did, although I was really happy with it and people seemed to like it, I knew that I was kind of saying, well, you know, whatever to the rock and roll and that, and just doing some slightly different things. You know, and I think some people dug it, and some people who had followed my music for years kind of maybe felt a little bit like, I just got some comments sometimes like I just couldn't get into it, and I don't mind criticism at all. You know, I love to hear the truth. It's very important as a performer and a writer to, you know, for people to level with you, because the last thing is you want is when people go, oh yeah, that's great, man, oh I love that. And you know, so it was interesting getting the different opinions about some people like, oh yeah, I really loved how you did, you know, a reggae track or something different. But then some of the other more rock fans are a bit like, oh, I couldn't really get into it. So I think this time I really want to do something that's just, it's just going to be fun, really. It's going to be, most of the tracks are upbeat, up tempo. There's going to be rip-roaring guitar solos, and there's harmonica, and you know, hopefully the drums will be nice. This is one of the first solo albums I've done in years where I'm playing all the drums on it. Usually I don't, you know, it doesn't normally happen. So yeah, I just think it's going to be a fun album. I hope it's just going to be a strong album, you know.
Awesome. Let's go back to drums. You know, sure. I know that you were part of the Who tribute band.
Oh yeah.
You were playing drums there. What can you tell us about that experience? What was the name of the band and what you did there?
The Who tribute was called Who's Next, and all I can say, it was incredible. It was incredible because at the time, this was kind of in the middle of the solo stuff. This was before I'd done 2 solo albums, and I kind of not had enough of drumming, but I was taking a break, and I said to myself, I'm not going to join another band anytime soon as a drummer, as a permanent drummer, unless there's either like a really sweet deal money wise, sorry, that's just the way it goes, you know, or if it's a signed band, or there's something really happening, or if it's a Who tribute, because the Who tribute was always like just one of those bucket list things, you know, because I love that style so much. And it came up and I auditioned and they gave me the job after like 1 song, and that was it. And it was like 2 and a bit crazy years of touring and playing all over the place, and you know, hanging out with, you know, alumni and playing with all sorts of different people. It was really, really, really amazing, and it gave me experiences that I never thought I was going to get. There were levels where I was like, you know, this is really special, and memories, you know, that you can't really replicate. But I learned a lot as well. I really learned a lot from it, which is
the drumming of Keith Moon is very complex, you know.
Yeah,
it's like all over, you know.
It really is. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I always said it's liberating to play like that, because if you play like Keith Moon in any other band, someone will turn around and go, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" You know, you can't play like that because there is no order. Yeah. But for some reason in the Who, it becomes order, and I can't explain it. You know, it was just one of those things. But what I can tell you, the only thing I will say is, when they asked me to join, I never learned any of the songs. I was that much of a fan. I knew all of the Keith Moon drum bits note for note. And that's not like a brag. It's just that I was so obsessed. Like, you can't imagine how many times I listened to Live at Leeds or Quadrophenia. Mm-hmm. It was like, I was just so zoned in. So when we did the rehearsals, it came together really quickly. And they said, you know, I bet you were terrified learning all those songs. And I was like, I just felt them. I just knew them already. And that's rare when that happens. And it's not about being a better drummer or being clever. It's just sometimes certain songs and music resonate with you so much that you're like, I got this, you know, I can do it, you know, so.
What can you tell us about your project, Famous Monsters, Mr. Tribute Band?
Sure. It was kind of like, I came out of the Who tribute and I had a bit of time. I went back to doing some more solo stuff. I did a solo tour, and I've always loved the Misfits. I'm not the biggest punk fan, you know, outright punk, but there are certain bands that I really love. And the Misfits, I mean, I'm a huge horror film fan, so I love all the makeup and all that. And I thought to myself, man, you know, I would love to do that. And I just thought, you know, I'm just going to do it. So I got some musicians together, and I just found out that it was like a real gap in the market. Like there isn't really a lot of that here in this country. In America, they're a massive band. Yeah. Over here, they're still big enough to fill like one stadium maybe once a year, but there's still a lot of fans. And sometimes you find with these more like what we call like niche kind of things, yeah, the venues might not be as jam packed with people who know what's going on, but the fans who are there are so loyal. They're so into it. And it's just a different vibe, you know, because there's a lot of audience participation. People love to get in your face, and you know, the gigs are very sweaty, and it's you know, and there's sound effects and like horror movies going off, and there's skulls everywhere, and it's just great fun. What can I say? It's like my idea of heaven, you know. So you know, I had a really great time with it, and the band came together so nicely, and we did some amazing gigs, and it was just a shame that the old COVID-19 kicked in. Hopefully we'll pick it back up when you know, when we're healed, you know.
So let's talk about your movies, you know.
Sure.
How do you start, you know, your love for movies, you know, making movies and filming and directing and acting?
Yeah, sure. Well, you know what, that was probably maybe a more of a simple answer. The weirdest thing was, you know, as every kid does, especially boys, they have wild imaginations, and I wanted to be a rock star and a drummer or whatever, but I wanted to be an actor as well. I guess I just wanted to entertain people, and I met a really good friend of mine called Dan Bennett, and I had sort of asked my parents and bothered my parents enough to buy me a little camera, and it came, and I called my mate up and I said, the camera's arrived, should we make a movie? And that's kind of where it started. And it's like, when
this happened, which year?
Oh my lord,
when did you get your first camera?
Man, it would have been about 2000, something like that. Cool. Yeah
a long time ago.
Yeah, oh man, you're telling me, but and it just grew from there. And then I went to college and studied film in college, and you know, it was like I could have gone to university, but I wanted to just go out into kind of like, I don't want to say the real world, because university is a wonderful thing, but I kind of wanted to just go to London and make films and work on films. So I kind of did a bit of everything, because I wanted to figure out like what I was about. And you know, as you know well, the arts are a wonderful way for you to learn about yourself. It's not always about, I want to do this, I want to do that. You know, we become musicians and actors or whatever because we're kind of discovering things. It's like our form of therapy. So for me, it was like, I'm going to take on some acting jobs. I wanted to do stunt training, which I did some of that. And I just dove in and just thought, whatever comes my way, I'm going to take it and then see where I land. Because, hey, I was 20 and it was just like, why not? Do you know what I mean? Actually, no, I wasn't even 20. I was 18. So
wow.
I was just like, we'll see what happens. So yeah, so the film thing actually came together before the music. I'd already been doing bit parts on films and that, and stunt work and things like that, probably 2 years before I played my first gig. So it seems strange. It is a really weird timeline, and even I get confused when I try and think back of memories. And sometimes when you explain it to people, like yourself, when you ask the question and you have to actually look at like, oh, is this how my life has gone? You know, it is kind of weird. But you know, everyone's different, and it's worked for me. It's been a long slog, but yeah. So that's kind of when the film thing started, and you know, it just stemmed from there. And obviously, naturally, the music comes together. And hey, look, I couldn't afford a composer, so I started writing the music for my own films that I was working on, and then other people asked me to do the music for their films, and that's how the composing thing kind of came around. So it was all, yeah.
And which are your influences on filming? I mean, your directors, your favorite movies?
Sure. You know, I think everybody wants to see someone sit there and go, well, you know, Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, but as much as I love those guys, I've always been into really kind of like cheap horror films.
Can I tell you something? That you remind me kind of like, you are like like John Carpenter, you know? He plays music and he makes horror movies, so it's like, that's
great. That's really cool, because he's one of he is one of the main inspirations. He's
my all-time favorite, you know?
He is incredible. Yeah, he is absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, to be able to have that sort of control And the only guy who does that now, really, who is next probably down the list for me, is Robert Rodriguez.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, here's a guy who's at the top of his game in Hollywood, and he's writing, directing, editing, he's behind the camera, he's doing the music, and he's doing the
Oh,
effects. It's insane. And no one else can get away with that level of control. It really is amazing. So people like that talent level, to the point where those massive producers trust all of those talents that he's got to be, you know, the biggest thing they have. That's incredible. That's incredible confidence. So for me, that's kind of what I strive for. So if someone hires me on a film gig, and then the next day I'm doing a soundtrack, and then the day after that I'm, you know, doing a drum track for someone, there is a moment where you feel it's really nice that people trust me to do those things, when most people in this country, a lot of people have an opinion sometimes of, you should only do one thing, don't try to be better than you are, and that's really unfair. You should really always try and reach your potential. Do you know what I mean? You should always go for the best that you can get. But for a long time, I think people have felt a bit like, oh, I probably shouldn't try and do that. And it's got better now. Now it's a lot more celebrated to be self-contained and self-sustainable, where you can edit and you can do all those things, mainly to save money. But even, you know, as much as 5-10 years ago, people really, they were down on you. They kind of looked at you like, you can't be a director and a drummer, and, you know, and it's just like, well, I can do whatever I want. You know what I mean? So there you go.
So there's a lot of people that don't know about the film and industry and movies.
Sure.
How I mean, how do you start a project? How you, from where, from scratch? How do you make a movie? I mean, yourself. How you do that?
Sure. Well, I mean, you know, from day one, it's always comes from a story, I think. I mean, I've worked, you know, so many years to obtain my own equipment, so I don't have to hire anything. I don't have to look, you know, to anyone else to get a camera or stuff like that. So when you get to that point where you've really just kind of built your own kind of studio, it really comes with the story, and to be honest with you, the want to do it, because filming a movie is such a draining experience. It's not like doing an album. I think a lot of people assume it could be different. It could be similar, rather, but it's not like being in a band, because when you do a band and you do the gig, you do one gig, and then the gratification is there instantly, and you know that night whether it went well or if it didn't go well, and then you can kind of save it again the next night. You go, that was terrible, we'll do it next week better. But with a film, you can't do that. You could spend maybe 2 years working on a film, and it could still not work out how you want. And in that time, you've lost money and you've lost all sorts. I know it sounds terribly depressing. It's not. I love it to pieces, but it takes a lot of emotional energy. So I need to be in a headspace where I'm like, yes, I really want to do this, you know. And then a story will come, and then it'll be like second nature. It's like, okay, we're going to film this then and film that there, but stories and ideas come to you in so many different ways, you know, that sometimes they just pop in there, and you're like, I need to write that down, or I need to do something with that. So yeah, it is like when people say, you know, when you're sat on the toilet, an inspiration comes to your head. Life is like that, you know. And but I can't stress enough about the want to do it, because I may have a story in my head, but I might be like, you know what, yeah, it's a great story, but right now I don't have the time. I'm just not feeling that huge commitment of like, okay, I'm going to open up my life for the next at least 12 months or whatever it may be. So I think the story is one thing, but you really need to be like, yes, I want to do it, you know, because it's such a big thing, you know. It's like training for a marathon. It's not something you go, oh, I might do that tomorrow, and then if I don't feel like it, we can ditch it. It's such a huge process, more so than making an album or being in a band and rehearsing for a tour. Even it's different, you know. It's a lot more personal in some ways.
So in the list of your movies, you know, all the movies that you made, which one is your favorite movie, and which one is your least favorite?
We have to mention the least favorite one. No, you know, it's always good to look at the one you hate because you know where you went wrong. Um, you know, I mean, they're just like low budget horror, you know, fun movies really. But I did enjoy The Whistler. You know, I enjoyed doing The Whistler because
And that's my favorite. My favorite.
you like it. I'm so glad you like it. It was just, you know, it was fun, and it was born out of, like you said, how does a movie process start? That film was born out of another movie that we were doing,
You
where
know,
we would get.
can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
In the beginning of the movie, the Whistler, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know who that voice is. The guy who's, you know, telling the story where the Whistler comes.
Yes.
Is your voice or someone else?
Pablo, if I had a voice like that, I'd be a millionaire. No. It's an actor called Paul Kelleher. You can look him up on IMDb. American actor. He's from Boston, and he does a lot of voiceover work on adverts and trailers. And he's a wonderful actor, and I've worked with him since 2006. And he's one of my best friends. And he's worked with everyone. He's been in movies with Christopher Lee. He was in one of the Bourne Identity movies, and he's just But he's got. His voice is like, you know, it's so low, and it's just amazing. Really amazing. Yeah.
And it reminds me kind of like the beginning of the story of the, you know, and I don't know if you never watched the movie 1980 movie The Fog from John Carpenter.
John Carpenter, yes, yes, sir. Yeah.
This old guy telling the story where.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, no, that's always in there, you know. But that's like a horror movie staple. There's always got to be an old guy telling a story, you know. And I think the thing is, everyone can relate to that because, you know, you look at someone like, you know, hypothetically, your uncle or your granddad or an old wise man. There's just something sort of creepy but comforting about an old guy telling you a story about what happened there and why you shouldn't go in there and what will happen to you if you do go there, you know. So it was just fun, campy Halloween horror cheese, you know. But I'm glad you dig it because we had so much fun making it. So when I watch it now, and I do watch it now and again, I'm just like, oh, that was great. So we might do a sequel one day.
Well, that will be great. So that's your favorite movie?
Yeah, I think so. What I really would love going forward, if I can make a movie like that, but just make it better, because, you know, we had a cheaper camera back then, and, you know, the effects weren't amazing. But if we can have a movie going forward that has the heart of that film and it's fun like that film. But with more modern technology. I mean, because this was 2010, which doesn't seem like a long time ago. But just to put into perspective, the camera that we used to shoot The Whistler was actually the world's first consumer grade HD camera. So technology has moved along so far since then. And now any tech heads out there, I'm using a GH5, and the quality is just mind blowing. It's so. You know, the next film that I'm working on will be, if you like The Whistler, you'll like this one, definitely.
Cool. Can you tell us some advanced things from this new movie?
Sure, yeah. It's going to be called, well, I mean, the working title, but I think it will stay. It's going to be called Artifacts of Fear. And it's an 80s style horror anthology with 3 tales and like a wraparound thing, and it's going to be like each tale has got its own kind of identity. So one is like a Hammer horror style, one is going to be like John Carpenter-esque kind of 80s style, and then the other one we're not sure just yet because we're sort of 60% done, but obviously COVID hit, and we've had to kind of rewrite some things. So but it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be like a Netflix and chill, get a pizza and, you know, chill out movie. But you know, it will have some freaky moments, but it's going to be a fun horror for, you know, Halloween and stuff like that. So.
Awesome. Great. That's great. So, well, it for me, it has been a true pleasure talking to you, you know. And
thank you. It's been wonderful, and honestly, I really appreciate it. It's so nice that you reach out, and you know, hey, any chance I can get to chew someone's ear off about my stuff. You know.
That's cool. So Rusty, thank you for everything. It was a pleasure, and we'll keep in touch. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. Cheers.
All right. See you
See you
later.
soon.
All right. Bye-bye.